Alright, welcome back. This is a review for Fruits Basket Season 2, Episode 20/45. And this is an episode that I have been waiting a very, very long time. Pretty much since when the remake was first announced. This is one of the episodes that I've been waiting to be animated. I'm just so excited about it. I'm so happy it finally got animated. And I actually was so excited that I completely forgot until the previews for this episode came out that we were getting the Cinderella portion of the episode. But regardless, that just made me even more happy. But oh my gosh, I'm just so happy that this episode finally got animated. So this episode is actually technically a combination of chapters 81 and 83. Because, and I think I mentioned it in the last episode, that I figured that they would kind of do this just because they kind of, each of the two related to each other, because the second half of last week's episode is actually chapter 82, and it fits between these two, the first half and second half of this episode. But I figured that they would combine them because one was, those 80 and 82 were Reen related, and 81 and 83 were student council related, so I figured that they would do this. Anyways, but the episode itself is, it's basically Yuki based. It's mainly a Yuki episode, but we get also some mainly student council stuff, dealing with Kakeru and Machi in particular, which I'll get into that in a little bit, because first I'm going to actually talk about the play, their culture festival play, because that's going to be easier to go over real quick. So it's been decided that for the culture festival, their class will be putting on the Cinderella, and which is, Uo wasn't too happy about. She wanted to do a historical play, which is just funny. But the casting for this play is very interesting. So we got Yuki as not the prince, because he already said that he would decline it, but as the fairy godmother. Okay, we have Toru as the evil stepsister, and then Minami, one of the Yuki fan club girls, as the evil stepmother, which apparently it was the Yuki fan club's plan to get Toru to play the evil stepsister, so it was funny. And then we have Kyo as the prince, and Hana as Cinderella. So it's a really interesting cast that we have going on here. Now, I know that there were I think there were some people who were questioning why did the class decide to choose Hana to play Cinderella? It's actually in a note in I forget where exactly it is, but it's in like a side panel or like an extra bit that Hana's actually very, very popular, and that Natsutakia wrote in about in particular the Cinderella play, that she said that Hana's actually very popular in her class, and so everyone wanted to do it just to see her play Cinderella. So that's why the roles got chosen as they were. And it's, oh my gosh, it's just so much fun, and it's gonna be good. I cannot wait for that episode to happen. It should happen within the next 3 episodes. We'll get it soon. And oh boy, is it going to be fun. It is a fun episode. When that happens. Anyway, but not the actual episode, but that is part of this episode, but it's just kind of get some little funny little gag moments in there. But again, the main portion of the episode is about Yuki and also Kakeru and Machi. So we start off the episode with Machi kind of freaking out, and she's kind of made a mess of the student council room like she did when we first saw her. And in this case, Kakeru and Yuki came in, and they kind of witnessed her making a mess of it. And then eventually Kimi and Neo come in, and Kakeru's like, hey, let me handle this, you guys just go to the meeting. And, I mean, they follow suit. And Neo's like, I've heard rumors that, Machi's just like this destructive girl, and that, she's always constantly breaking things and flipping things over and whatnot. And Neo's like, we should go back there and, reprimand her and whatnot. And Yuki's like, we'll deal with it later. And I really hope that Eric Vale, when this episode gets dubbed, who plays he's English voice actor for Yuki. I really hope that he does something similar to what the Japanese voice actor does, where he completely changes his voice and he gets like this super serious voice, and it's really funny, and it's so good. But the Japanese voice actor did amazing. I'm hoping Eric Vale will do something similar whenever the dub gets around to being released for this episode. So, they eventually come back, and Machi's gone, but Kakeru's still there, and the place is still messy, and Neo's like, well, fine, if she can just go home and not pick up, then I'm just gonna go, so I'm gonna do so as well. And then Kakeru and Yuki wind up having this conversation, and Kakeru winds up, because Yuki, while he was away, was thinking, I know it's Machi who clearly wrecked the room, but I just need to get her to calm down for right now. And I wonder what her and Kakeru's relationship is, because they seem really close, but they don't seem like they're dating or anything. And it turns out that, yes, that's correct, in that Kakeru winds up telling him that him and Machi are actually half-siblings. And he explains that they kind of had a successorship issues in their family, and that's because they have the same, Kakeru and Machi have the same dad, but different moms. Kakeru's mom is the mistress of his dad, while Machi's mom is the legal wife of their dad. And because he's a boy and 1 year older, but to the mistress, and then you have Machi, who's a year younger but a girl, but to his actual wife there's this big successorship feud between them, that both mothers kind of got Machi and Kakeru in pretty much from the time that they were little, and they kind of have this very Spartan, as Kakeru said, they have a very Spartan upbringing, which if you don't really know what that means, it means basically that they're pretty much always put against each other, always to see who was the best at this, or who was the who could climb the monkey bars the best, who was the best at math, or stuff like that, or who was the best at anything and everything, that you could potentially make a competition out of. Their parents made them have a competition between them to see who would be better, so they could see who would be the best successor or whatever. And eventually Kakeru kind of figured out what was going on, and he got tired of it, and he snapped one day, and he told his mom that he didn't want to be part of it anymore. And his mom realizing that what she was doing was wrong, and what she was doing and what she did was wrong, and so she said, okay, fine, and she didn't push the subject anymore. She just stopped pushing him to do that. And as he said, it was kind of a wake-up call for his mom. And he had, and he said pretty much after that he was free. He didn't have to worry about that anymore. But then, as Kakeru's kind of talking about, he realizes that I might be free, but Machi probably isn't free from this yet. That's probably why she's still kind of, has this built-up anxiety and stress, and that she's probably still under that pressure to be the best at everything. In order for her to become the successor to her father's money or estate or whatever it is. And it's funny because you get this scene where initially Kakeru flips up the papers that Yuki had, and then they start picking it up together. And then Yuki, after hearing this, he takes the papers that now are in Kakeru's hand, and he flips them upwards and then scatters them again. And it's just really funny, but really kind of heartwarming moment, because you kind of see that, again, Yuki's starting to change, and he's starting to be like, yeah, I'm going to do silly, goofy things even in front of this other guy. But Kakeru's like, it's stupid to kind of get your children wrapped up into issues that are adult matters. And Yuki kind of responds with, after flipping the papers, he's like, it's, you can't, but you have to live with it, you can't, parents can't trade who their children are, and children can't trade their parents. You can't choose who someone is. And so you just kind of have to live with, even if they're, stupid, or if they're irritable, or what they do is foolish. You can't change who they are. You just kind of have to live with it. And you get this metaphor that Yuki had brought up earlier, and that gets brought up here, that, oh, it's like a shirt that's buttoned up wrong. Because Kakeru mentions about his family that everything's pretty much good to go with them now. They're good, but there's still some little hard feelings um, from before with them forcing him to try to be part of the successorship feud. Um, and so there's still some hard feelings from that, but and so it's kind of like, as you said, it's a sweater buttoned up wrong. And um, initially Yuki's like, boy, and he says you're gonna have to live with it, and then he initially was about to say, or he was trying to say, that you're gonna have to try to learn to fix the button, recorrect the buttons. But Kakeru says, no, don't worry about trying to recorrect, fix the buttons up and put them in the right holes. Says, you can just live with it like it is, even if it is goofy, even if it is weird looking, you can live with it like it is, because that shows that, one, those things happened, but two, that later on you can just and laugh at it. And that's what Yuki calls him out and says, your jacket looks funny buttoned up that way. But he's like, yeah, just, you'll be able to laugh it off. That's what you're supposed to do in these situations. That hopefully one day you will be able to laugh off these things that are hard to deal, that were hard to once hard to deal with, but now hopefully aren't anymore, and that you've moved past. And so you jump back to not jump back, but then you kind of jump over to Yuki, and he's actually talking to his mom, and that's because he's trying to get a cell phone. And, they get all the things squared away, and it's kind of like, okay, what's she going to do? Is she going to try to, manipulate him, or be kind of say negative things towards him again? And right as he's about to leave, she's like, hey, Yuki, don't spend too much time on your phone, okay? And it's like, and it shocks Yuki, and he's later thinking to himself, he says, that's the first time she's really ever said anything so parent-like before. And he kind of chuckles at it, and then he remembers what Kakeru says is, yeah, just laugh it off. And that, yeah, him and his mom, Yuki and his mom might still have hard feelings about the situations from the past, but if they're able to kind of start reconnecting again, and even able to laugh off some of the things of which had happened previously, although not everything, but even kind of just laugh off what the relationship is now, then that means things can actually start to improve and actually start to get better, and it's really sweet, and it's so good. And then we jump over back to the next day, and Machi comes back in, and she's like, hey, she apologizes and says, I won't ever do it again, about breaking things. And Yuki comes up, and he's like, hey, listen, how about instead of trying to, just apologize and, try to keep yourself from doing it again, why don't you could, we want to be here for you. We want to help you out. So, I mean, I think it'd be better if you actually told us maybe why you did these things, so that we can understand better, not only understand better as to why you did them, but also help us to understand how to keep you from doing them, and to help you release your stress in more productive ways, and in non-destructive ways. And it's really sweet. And then Kimi's all like, "Oh, Yuki, you're so prince-like." And I only bring that up because Yuki's like, "Oh, well, no, I'm not very prince-like." And Machi just is kind of like, you just see Machi's face like, interesting. Of course, that's when Yuki kind of skips over and he goes to announce the results for the Cinderella play. But when he comes back, it's just Kimi and Neo, and so he's looking for some papers, and he winds up going into the closet, to which then the closet door gets shut, and it's permanent. It's like the lock's broken, and so he's kind of stuck in there in this dark room with no lights. And he kind of wanders around, and Kimi and Neo start freaking out, and they're like, "Oh, go get help." And he's trying to find the light switch, but he winds up running into a can of paint that spills over and kind of spills, and you're like, oh man, it's black paint. And he starts remembering what, and of course all throughout this episode, both like the beginning, middle, and end, you get this entire kind of through dialogue of him thinking about how he feels about Toru, how kind of like what you know, there's something that him, at the beginning of the episode, he's like, there's something that me and Reen have in common that we both yearn for. And then he remembers during the when he's looking at Kyo and Toru that, hey, you know, one day, or you remember Shigure's words, which are, you know, are you going to continue to let yourself be cared for, or, and then here he remembers what Akito's telling him, or we kind of get to hear a little bit of what Akito finally told him at the beach when it was just kind of their confrontation they had very briefly. And Akito's like, I know what you want from Toru Honda, and what you want is, and then it kind of gets cut off. But he's kind of standing around in the dark with the paint fumes going around, and all of a sudden, like, you hear kind of everyone else go freaking out in the background, not sure what to do, and then all of a sudden the door busts open, and it's Machi. She broke the door open with a chair, funny enough, but she's standing there, and she broke the door open for him. And you get this where he was in the darkness, complete darkness, and then thanks to her opening the door, he's now been revealed into the light, and it's like almost in a sense, it's like a light bulb that came on, and he officially has made the realization, in a sense, you could say, of what he's kind of realized it before, but but he's really kind of confirmed it, and it's like, okay, this is how I feel, and he's more accepting of it. And again, we kind of get that at the end of the episode, but he Machi, you know, tells him, hey, I thought you would be, I thought you would be anxious if you stood around this dark room, and so I broke the door open. He thanks her. Then he kind of feels like vomiting, so him and Machi go and they leave. Not him and Machi, but him and Kakeru go, and they go out and they talk outside, and not Kakeru, I'm trying to keep mixing up the wrong characters. Yuki winds up telling Kakeru, hey, you know, there's something that I've, you know, been meaning to, there's something that I've been thinking, and it's kind of pitiful and pathetic, but it's something I haven't told anyone about, including her, referring to Toru. And then he thinks to himself, you know, the thing of which I wanted most from Toru, and that I yearned from Toru was, and then it ends on a cliffhanger, and I understand why they cut off Yuki's sentence, even though in the manga it's not cut off, but I understand why they cut it off, because he's pretty much going to say the exact same thing at the end of, like, next week's episode, or close to end of next week's episode. So I understand why they cut it off, because it'd be like he'd be saying the exact same thing twice at the end of 2 episodes back to back. But at the same time, it's like, why? They didn't have to cut off his sentence. That's the only thing that's kind of annoyed me. But other than that, it's like, I get it, I understand. Moving on. But yeah, we have a lot of little interesting things in this episode, including the fact that Yuki really is starting to move on, and that, again, he's completely, if you look at how he is now compared to who he was the very first episode in season 1, he is a completely different character. Thanks to Toru, he has come out of his shell, and he's not as, you know, kind of, I wouldn't say stuck up, but he's not as shy or whatever. He's a lot more outspoken. He's a lot more where he doesn't really care what other people think about him, what he says or how he acts. He's starting to really become his own person, and it's all thanks to Toru. And as one of the things, again, he thinks back to Shigure, which is, you know, are you going to continue letting yourself be cared for, or are you going to move on? You're going to actually step up on your own now that you have been cared for. Are you going to try to pull yourself together at your own strength and maybe even start helping others? And this is where you get Yuki, who is now, he's starting to transition, really starting to transition from being, I'm being helped from Toru, to I'm going to help other people now. He's been helped, and he's gained a lot through that. He's gained a lot of his own he's gained a lot of his own person through all this, through Toru. And now that he kind of has the strength to be able to stand up on his own now, he sees someone like Machi, and he's kind of starting to want to help her be able to stand up on her own, be able to break out of her shell, to be able to stand up for herself and become her own person. And it's so good, and I love it so much. again, I love this. This is one of the episodes I've been waiting for pretty much since or not gonna say pretty much since the announcement of um the remake. This is one of the episodes I've been waiting to be animated because it's such a good episode and there's so many little things in this episode. It's a funny episode too. Uh, but that's really about it. I mean, I could talk forever, but I'm not going to because I don't want this video to be too long. But it's, I just love this episode so much. Anyway, next week's episode, you might need to get some more tissues out. I'm just saying, if you didn't use all your tissues for reading the backstory, you might need some more tissue. You might need to buy some more or use whatever you have left over because you're probably gonna need some more tissues for next week's episode. But that's really about it. So thanks for watching and bye for now.